our country was founded. And things involving interstate commerce and so forth are appropriate federal issues. Education, frankly,
national security being the most
obviously. Education is one of those things that I must confess I look at somewhat differently. I think that's more of a national concern than it used to be from a standpoint of economic competitiveness in a global economy. We're falling behind in that respect.
Elaborate on that, because I want to come to what you might do. How are we falling behind, and what is responsibility?
We clearly are falling behind in terms of K through 12 education, in terms of standards, in terms of test results, in terms of people who are dropping out or not going to high school. And we're competing not with the guy down the street, we're competing with the guy on the other side of the world nowadays, and education is a large part of that. So it becomes more of a national concern. My biggest concern is not that it's not a proper issue for the federal government to address, because I think to a certain extent it is that the federal government has no solutions there. The federal government is not competent to deal with that. We have hundreds of education programs now. We've been increasing federal funding for over 40 years. If federal funding was directly related to results of our students, they'd all be Rhodes Scholars by now. That's clearly not happening. The federal government spends less than 10%, 8–9% of our educational expenditures now, and it must be spent wisely. But there's been no program that you can say that should apply to the entire nation that's proven to have worked. We're still falling behind. No Child Left Behind is no exception to that rule. That's something I voted for that I don't think has worked out very well.
Why not?
I think the answer, well, in No Child Left Behind, one of the reasons is that states are setting their own standards, and the better their students do, the more easily the federal money flows to them. So remarkably, all the students are doing very well, thank you.
So the tests are not accurate, you think, because they simply want more money?
I don't think the tests are accurate. You can't get away from what has worked for us in so many different areas in this country, and that is free people, free markets, and competition and experimentation. And it gets back to the federalism issue. This has been the responsibility, education, of the state and local governments primarily for over 200 years. And to say that, okay, you had your try, now we're going to absolve you of this responsibility because we've got a great idea at the federal level is not true, and it's not the way to go. I think things like voucher programs and things of that nature are very, very good. I think you've got to say to parents, number one, and then to local officials, number two, and school boards and so forth, to provide this ingenuity, provide the funding, provide the good teachers, have the good requirements, demand certain results, you know, at the local level. And we'll do better in that regard. The federal part of it should be, the money should be used wisely, but not with the idea that we really are going to be able to come up with a program or a series of programs that's going to turn that education system around. A lot of it is sociological, you know, the breakdown of the family, for absentee fathers and things of that nature. That plays into it too. It's
socioeconomic factors are as important.
Very, very important. Yeah, I think you know, you've got young men growing up, you know, without parental supervision, without a father or father figure, you know, and they go to school sometimes, and the teacher has to be the educator and the disciplinarian both, and that does not work out. That's not the whole problem, obviously.
But what would you do about that problem? I mean, if that is
well, I would tell the truth to where the responsibility belongs. I think that one of the great things about the presidency is the bully pulpit that it offers, and occasionally it's not a matter of proposing a program, it's a matter of telling the truth, and that is to say to people at the local level, to say to a parent, don't waste your time getting into the car, driving by the schoolhouse, driving by the school board, driving up to the state capitol, drive past the state house, out to the airport to fly to Washington, D.C. to tell a bunch of politicians some problem you've got with your kid's education. First of all, be a good parent. First of all, you know, folks, if they would wait and have kids after they got married, and then we'd have two parents, you know, to the extent possible, bringing the child up, and then holding local officials responsible. And saying at the federal level, with regard to certain kinds of issues, certain kinds of programs, we can provide money in a block grant form without a lot of strings and without a lot of bureaucracy and so forth, you know, to assist in certain major areas. But the decisions have to be yours and the responsibilities are yours.
Would you do away with No Child Left Behind, or would you fix it?
I would fix it. There are proposals out there where monies can be directed for the same purposes, more in a block grant form, without a lot of the strings attached. A lot of states have to build their own bureaucracies in order to just comply with the federal regulations and spend an awful lot of money that could otherwise be directed into better activities. I think the money in a general direction can be something that all good people can agree on. The details of the program should be left to the people where the responsibility lies.
Teachers. How do we get better teachers in America?
Same answer, I think. Part of No Child Left Behind had to do with certain things that the states and local governments had to do, and certain teachers had to have certain qualifications and so forth. You know, I think, for example, we'd do a lot better if we open our system up to people with expertise in certain areas that don't necessarily have an education degree or have gone through the educational establishment, things of that nature. But again, that's not something that the federal government should dictate.
Let me just make sure I understand exactly where you'd put education in a Thompson presidency. Where is the priority for you?
Well, education, as I said, is very important. I mentioned the international competitive standpoint. I think it's ultimately going to be very important from a social stability standpoint. We don't want to ever get into the situation of the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer in this country. And getting poorer has a lot to do with education and not getting an education. And it makes the disparity greater. If you, you know, go to school and at least get a high school education and play by the rules, you've still got a pretty good chance of achieving the American dream in this country. The IRS did a study recently tracking people's tax returns over a 10-year basis, and awful lot of people, majority of the people, moved from the lower rung to higher rungs. Not all of them reached the highest rung. But we're a mobile society, but it's in large part based on education, and it's of great concern. But we shouldn't delude ourselves to think that that all of a sudden, because of somebody that's come up with a brilliant position paper, that we're really going to be able to change areas of responsibility and come up with a federal solution that's really going to change all that.
You think America's in decline?
No, I don't think we're in decline. I think that you know, we have bumps in the road. I think we have some days better than others, just like we as individuals do. But no, I don't think we're in decline. I think that you know, we've had a pretty short run of it actually in this country as a democracy, is the most prosperous and the freest, the most powerful in the history of the world. And the historians tell us that all great nations eventually decline, but I think it doesn't have to be that way, and certainly after the brief run that we've had in this country, we shouldn't be thinking in those terms.
What do we need beyond education to maintain our competitive position in the world?
Strength, prosperity, and unity.
Prosperity.
Yeah.
A lot of people look at the decline of the dollar today, and